Okay, we're in Parsha Beshalach, Perek Tes Zayin, chapter 16 of the book of Shemos, verse 19 and 20. We're reading about the manna that falls down from heaven, how Hashem had provided Israel with the manna, and he gave a command to Israel to gather and for enough for their day during the week to be able to eat and not to leave any over until the morning. But on Friday they were to collect double so that they would not have to go out and collect on Shabbat. And in verse 19 it says, Moshe said to them, no man may leave over from it until morning. And then it says, Velo shamu, but El Moshe vayotiru anashim mimenu ad bocher vayarum tolaim vayavash. And they did not obey Moshe, and people left over from it until morning, and it became infested with worms, and it stank. And Moshe became angry with them. It says that it became infested with worms and it stank because they left it over. Now the Hachaim actually brings out a interesting thought on this verse, and he says that why does it say infested with worms and it stank? Usually when food becomes bad, it usually produces a foul odor first and then becomes infested with worms. But here the order of the wording is reversed. It says that it became infested with worms and then it stank. And if we go to verse 24, it says they put it away until morning as Moshe has commanded it. And it did not stink and there was no infestation in it. It's the other way around. It did not stink and there was no infestation in it. There was no worms. And so if they did not listen during the week and kept manna over to the next day, it automatically became bad and with worms. But on Shabbat, it did not have this result. And so what is going on here? And the Hachaim explains that when normally food does produce a foul, and then worms will come. But because this is a sweets normally don't produce a foul odor. And if they do, sometimes the worms infest it first. And we know that the manna was sweet because it tells us in verse 31 that they tasted like cake fried in honey. And so this is what the Hachaim says, even though that maybe Chazal will say that, well, it could stink and then have worms. There's a little discussion in this, but the Hachaim actually brings out a remez to all of this, that what's really going on here. And he says from the following verse, when it says in verse 20, but they did not obey Moshe, and the people left over from it until morning, and it became infested with worms, and it stank, vayivash. He brings out a remez that says that the worms really were only developed because something has become evil. And he brings this out from Targum Onkelos. Onkelos translate the word evil, ra, and he gives him an example in Bereshis 2:9, which means evil can actually mean bish. Bish, which is phonetically related to the word vayivash in our verse. And so also when we do not follow Hashem's commands or rebel against them, this is actually classified as evil. So it wasn't so much that the worms infested because it had to do with foul odor. The worms were infested with it because of the evil that was being done. And this is also goes back to Gan Eden, where man, Adam, took part in the first sin, took part in the fruit. And this is why fruits can be infested with worms, and also the air. The Hachaim says the air that hovers above the ground causes worms to come out and crawl. And so this is what it means that the Torah says that since the worms were not a natural occurrence, but rather an indication of the sin that was done with the manna, we can understand why when Moshe told them on Friday to put it away in verse 23, for yourselves as a safekeeping until the morning. The Torah says then they put it away until morning as Moshe commanded, velo hivish, and it did not become classified as evil, and there was no infestation in it. And we see that this means that they were commanded to leave manna over until Shabbos morning. The manna was not affected by something evil because they were listening to Moshe and Hashem's commands. And so, in the same vein, the Hachaim says, the Zedekim, the righteous people who do not allow themselves to partake in sin, not to taste evil in their lifetimes, will do not become infested with worms after they die. And this can be learned from the incident in Bava Metzia in 84b that occurred with the Tana Ar Eleazar, son of Ar Shimon ben Bar Yochai, may he rest in peace. On the account of his righteousness, his body did not decompose and did not become infested with worms. Nevertheless, it says one worm developed in his ear because of something evil affected him there. And the footnotes actually say that Ar Eleazar came to his wife in a dream and attributed the worm to the fact that he had sinned by listening to the disparagement of a rabbinic student and not protesting. A little bit of Lashon Hara that affected the ear, and this can cause a worm. But just amazing commentary on the manna and the infestation of worms from the Hachaim. Thought I'd share that with you. And we're coming close to Shabbat, so I pray that everyone obeys the Shabbat, obeys Hashem. Shabbat is our safe keep. We are to safeguard it. And Shavua Tov. I hope you enjoyed.